It is my pleasure to introduce Aleida Rios, a 1991 graduate in chemical engineering of Texas A&M. She's a senior vice president of engineering at BP, responsible for 2,500 engineers and director of BP's Global Engineering Center. In recognition of her outstanding career, she's been elected to the Royal Society of Engineers. She moved to Houston from Mexico as a child, and although she didn't speak English fluently, she spoke math fluently. And a high school teacher who happened to be a chemical engineer suggested that she study engineering. She's motivated now by two big challenges. The first, of bringing energy to the world to improve people's quality of life and to maintain our quality of life. And the second, to inspiring and developing a diverse workforce so that women no longer run the risk of being hidden figures. Our modern way of life depends on energy, as of now, primarily from fossil fuels. But climate change makes it essential we increasingly decarbonize our energy systems. And while large improvements in the production of solar and wind energy have occurred in the past 10 years, much, much more is needed. Engineering is built on breakthroughs, and Aleida Rios is intent on leveraging the current capabilities of BP in oil and gas production to help produce the innovations needed to reduce our carbon output. Aleida?
Yes, thank you, Virginia. Wow, how do you follow those amazing ladies, Huda and Cullen? And actually, I was talking to Virginia before we gathered, and she has an amazing story. If you haven't heard it, it's she led the way for me to even be here standing in front of you. I also decided on pictures, because I figured by the time you hear from three people talking, you know, it's easier to say your story in pictures. So I also chose a few pictures to just talk about who I am. But I wanted to start first with who I am. It's actually not that bio or those things that are written on papers or those accomplishments that you hear about. It's really where I came from. And the first, let's see, I think I have the slides. Yeah, so that's really, I want to talk a little bit about where I came from. You know, I was an immigrant to the U.S. Many people here in Houston come from that background. But yeah, I stepped into a classroom. Well, first of all, I'd say I stepped into Dallas and it was too cold for us Mexicans. So we came down south, and that's the truth. But anyway, I stepped into a classroom in Houston where actually at that time, you know, there wasn't very many people that spoke Spanish. I know that seems odd in a city like Houston, but it really was. Not many people spoke Spanish. And so my name, thank you, Virginia, is Aleida Rios. That's what my mom calls me. But here in Houston, I'm often called Aleida Rios because that's the way the teacher pronounced my name. And an 8-year-old that doesn't speak English is not going to be trying to correct a teacher. So that's where I started from. But I want to talk about that a little bit because that also built a lot of resilience in being different, in knowing what that feels like and understanding how do then I overcome challenges. But anyway, so I came into Houston from Mexico. And then my inspiration, oftentimes I'm asked, well, what was your inspiration for engineering? I had no idea what engineering was. No idea. I know you step into Houston, how could you not? But my parents came from energy poverty in Mexico. We grew up very happy. By the way, we didn't know what energy poverty was. We were happily, but there was only 5th grade education. Because with energy, with accessibility to energy, you also get education, you also get so many things that we have that we enjoy. Well, my parents came to the U.S. because they wanted education for their children. That's the reason. So obviously, what I knew was I needed to get an education. Of course, my dad was a little worried because I couldn't make tortillas. And I couldn't cook. So my mom says, we came to here because the girls are going to study. And my dad was like, who's going to marry them? They don't know how to cook. And my mom would say, they're going to be able to buy the tortillas and the tamales. And that's what they're going to do. So anyway, so Texas A&M University came, I should say before Texas A&M University, Houston has a great education system that we need to protect. I know we talk a lot about education, but it's so important that we protect the education system that we're providing here. I am a product of that education system. So I went to Milby High School, which, by the way, was petrochemical careers. It's now math and science, but it was petrochemical careers at that time. And I had a teacher that you mentioned that came from, like Virginia, came from industry, and that told me, you need to study engineering. I said, I don't know what that is, but I could use a job. So she got me a job, an internship at the refinery, at Shell Refinery down in Pearland. So anyway, I went there, and that's how I ended up at A&M. I basically applied to engineering and got a scholarship, and later I'll tell you why I chose chemical engineering in particular. But Texas A&M was my home. The other thing I want to talk about is, a lot of times, I think anybody that knows me knows my boys. And it was nice that Virginia actually said, and you have 3 boys. And yeah, and one of the biggest accomplishments and who I am was, and you mentioned your children as well and the challenges. I've faced similar challenges, but one of my biggest accomplishments is my middle son, Gabriel, just graduated civil engineering at Texas A&M. And there's a legacy there, and we're giving back because we want more and more underrepresented groups in engineering, women and minorities and ethnic minorities. We really care for that. My husband, Ed, is also a big part of why I do what I do. He came from a working mother. His mother was an entrepreneur that basically in San Antonio had beauty salons. And sometimes people ask me, well, why you do what you do? Because I actually had a husband who grew up with those symbols and that ability to see and believe and support me. And now I have 3 boys that are going to be amazing, amazing husbands for working women. So anyway, my oldest, Anthony, is in finance economics. My husband has always dual career. We always worked. And anyway, they always came to work with me. That's another thing. I could never physically have them there, but that's a come bring your children to work day. They always knew that what I was doing mattered. It wasn't more important than them. And that's really who we are and where we come from. And it's really not all those things you read and the accomplishments and all that kind of stuff. But I will talk a little bit about my career in energy. So the next, this is just pictures again. And I wanted to just talk about the amazing amount of innovation that has occurred around in technology innovation that I've seen in the energy. This is the energy capital of the world, and we've seen it. We've seen what it's brought. We've explored in deep water, which, by the way, I know we talk about health, which you've heard a lot about already here today. And obviously I come from the energy industry, but the other place that's really bounded, that lives here in Houston is space exploration. And let me tell you, the exploring in deep water, Gulf of Mexico, deep water, period, is like going to the moon. And it is so much fun. I have so much fun. You say that, that was driving you, getting up in the morning. I could not leave my boys and come to work if I wasn't having fun. But those challenges, today we're working with digital twins, we're working with robotics, we're working with creating a new energy system that is so needed. So the challenges what drove me to be an engineer. It really is about facing challenges, working together to provide solutions to improve the world and the world that we're in. So that was really a lot of what I gained from that. But one of the other things that I really have gained is just being visible, being able to have young girls. So the other thing I do a lot is go to schools and talk to students, and being able to actually just be present, be in the rooms that many times Virginia had the pathway for me, but just realizing that you're creating a pathway everywhere you go. And so the work that I do is not just the day work, the day job, is really also about creating opportunities for others. Some of the biggest thing that I can remember, I've already talked about my son in the engineering, but this picture of Royal Academy of Engineering is in 2021, I received the International Fellowship from the Royal Academy of Engineers. They elect only 50 every year, and the International Fellowship in the UK is given to just about 4 or 5, and they asked me to apply, or they nominated me for the application, and I looked at the previous winners, and I said, these are all like you know, these are like Nobel Peace Prize, you know, all this. And I was like, that's not me. Why me? And actually, it turned out that, you know, engineers are in all parts and pieces, and we all matter. And what they really wanted to recognize is the engineers that have an impact on everyday life. And the recognition that applied engineering is really, really important. And so anyway, I was elected at the Royal Academy of Engineering in the UK, and I'm a fellow of the Royal Academy, and I really enjoy meeting some amazing engineering fellows that have done incredible pieces of work. So anytime I step into a university like Rice University, or I go to the fellowship, or I walk into any academic area, I just think, wow, if we could just give this education potential to everybody that we touch, what would the world be like? Because these universities, it's not just engineering or really about solving problems. We as engineers are doing that. The access to women, to having more women in engineering is big for me. So 40% of the female engineers, chief engineers, the 40% of the chief engineers now at BP are women. And why? Because I became the head of engineering, plain and simple. Plain and simple, and I can tell you they were there before I came. Plain and simple. And today we also have 46% of all the new engineers that are coming into BP of female, because they're there. So it is intentional. It is intentional what we do with our privilege, and that's really, really important to me. And those are really the biggest accomplishments I can say. I can talk about all the technology stuff, things that wake me up and get me up in the morning, and then why I'm an engineer. But the real things that matter are what differences I can make for underrepresented groups in engineering. But in terms of I should say that the one thing that I didn't mention is it was all so scary. All of it. Every morning I get up and I say, what am I going to do today? If I'm scared, go for it. So one of the things that I wish I'd done more often is actually gone for the things that scared me. So I loved your stories because it was like, oh my God, you did that? Oh my God, you know, but that's really, really important. So I know I see some young women in the audience today, go for the things that scare you. If you get that little thing in the pit of your stomach, but you know you love to do it, go for it, because it is kind of how the things that I've managed to do that really scared me were the ones that grew me the most and made the biggest difference. But our paths are very, very, you know, they're just, who knows? You know, you start out your path and you really don't know. But there's a couple of things that isn't straightforward, but there are a couple of things that I look back at my 25-year-old self and said, I wish I'd known this, or somebody had told me this. And there's a couple of things that for me were really important. At the bottom, I talk a lot about, and I heard it in your stories, just how important it is to get in the field, to do that technical work, to really understand I've been in over 30 years. I've always said the last 15 years of my career were built on the first 15. And if I hadn't done that frontline work, my very first job was on this is what they were called, a gang truck. It was an oil field truck that basically had 5 different disciplines on the truck because everything was pneumatic and you had to have all electrician, mechanical, you had to have everybody. And I was the one that picked up the trash. And, you know, you had to paint, you know, you had to have everything on that truck. But that's where I started. Do you know what my dad thought about me going out to the oil fields of West Texas to get in a truck to go out and clean up well sites? Well, it was scary. It was scary, but we have to do that work. But the fact that I did a lot of that frontline job, the following job was in a plant in West Texas, No Trees, Texas. And there really wasn't any trees there. But anyway, and then that's where my dad really got scared that I was never going to get married. But anyway, those frontline jobs teach you, obviously, the technical skills. Obviously, those all are hugely important. And I do talk a lot about that technical depth and that know-how, especially for women, because we do have to do it. You know, I mean, Virginia and I talked about this in our chat. You just have to you just have to do it better, because if somebody's always looking at something that isn't going to go right, and then they question why did it not go right. So really building that credibility and the depth is really important. But the other thing it taught me is resilience. So we talk a lot about technical, but what you also learn is some character skills that are really, really important. How to work with people, how to ask for help, how to be scared and overcome that, how to be resilient. And those are the things that actually really propel me to keep going for those things that scared me, because you will make mistakes, you will get setbacks. You will feel self-doubt every day, all day, but just overcoming that every day as well really builds that resilience. So the last 15 years, I always tell people that bottom looks really small, but that's where the depth was. That's where everything occurred the first, 10 to 12 years. By the way, I was also having children at that time. So I was either trying to get pregnant, after maternity leave, breastfeeding, or trying to, have the third. So yeah, if you think about 3 years, 3 kids, 2 years apart, 10 years. They were either they were here, or here, But they always came to work with me. I always brought them to work with me. But I also had my husband who helped me a lot, my mother, my comadres, my tribe, my community. But then the other thing, after I've done that, I think it's, Cullen also said it is really important you also build some breadth. So I got some finance experience, some commercial experience, some strategy. Even though I knew engineering was what I wanted to do, I also knew that to be a better problem solver, and I needed some of that breadth. So I did that, and then after that, it's boring. Then it's all the VP jobs and all the SVP jobs. That's that part is boring. The fun part about that part is that you have more impact. You can have more impact on people in the way that you go about doing those jobs. And so that's the biggest thing about my VP. By the way, I was VP of operations in the Gulf of Mexico after Macondo. So, it was rebuilding an organization. It was onshore operations when we were turning off the lights because we didn't think we were going to have enough gas. So yeah, all those years were really important, but all those years were really about people and people's potential, and that's been what's been fun about the executive roles. And then so now what keeps me here? What keeps me kind of in this after 30 years? It's actually climate. So I have really, honestly, in 2020, when we actually in BP reimagined, we called it Reimagining BP for people on the planet. But what that was is the science is real. The science is here. There's no denying it, and it's everyone's problems. And the energy companies of the world have to solve it, because I don't think we're giving up. I haven't seen anybody give up too much of what we have. But the most important thing on that is we also can't leave anybody behind while we create these solutions. So the world does need lower carbon, but they also need it to be secure, and we need it to be affordable, because it needs to be affordable to be insecure and low carbon, because we cannot leave anybody behind in this problem. And today, it's an amazing time to be an engineer, and I'm super excited about that, because I've always said, and being energy is about improving people's life, and I think there isn't a more important time in our lifetime than to actually solve climate. So that's kind of what keeps me here. So the challenges, it is pretty scary, and trust me, these podiums, every time you talk about climate and you happen to work for an oil company, it's not necessary. I've never taken a role because it was popular. I've taken a role because it mattered. And I am super, super excited about what Houston has meant in energy, what we've been able to accomplish, and what the future challenges are for us in the world, and we need to solve it. The final thing I wanted to talk about was really needing to have more females pursuing STEM and STEM careers. And I'm glad we're having this conversation today, because I do think it's hugely important that the underrepresented groups have access, and we create that space, because the innovation that we need to solve some of these problems is pretty important. But I wanted to have a few messages to those that are thinking about it or considering it, just things that I would tell my 25-year-old self. And I think some of them have already come up, so I'll just summarize. I wrote to myself, "You are enough." And it's really hard to say that when you grew up with the self-doubt, but don't let anyone tell you it isn't for you or you're not enough. Love it first, of course. If you're not doing something you don't love, please go find something else. You have to love it, but you are enough, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Failures and challenges, embrace them. Don't be so hard on yourself. That's your greatest growing opportunities. I love my failures. I do hate it when it happens, but getting myself back up from the ground and from those failures and from the challenges, it's a yogi thing. If you can get yourself up without using your hands until you're 80, that's my goal. So yes, challenges and failures are just opportunities. Ask for help. I didn't talk enough about the tribes of people that have helped me. I'm not just talking about my mentors and my coaches at work. I'm talking about my husband. I'm talking about my comadres. I'm talking about my mother. I'm talking about my father, who actually died from Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So I love the work that we're doing. So yes, but I asked for a lot of help. I'm talking about that logistic manager that actually brought me a refrigerator because he happened to ask me, why do you need a refrigerator, young lady? And I said, well, because I'm breastfeeding and I need to store my breast milk so we can ship it. He goes, I'll be the first one to ship your breast milk. So he's part of the asking for help. So my final message to female engineers, less so about the 25-year-old, is there's more of us now. We have made progress. And so therefore, it's now our job to also help each other. So it's not just males anymore that need to help. It's all of us need to support and help each other. So I've never had the myth of women not supporting women is a myth. And I do believe that the only difference was there wasn't enough of us. Now there is in STEM, so now we can do more with our privilege and give back. And I do believe that that's a big part of what I need to do, and I ask all of us to do that collectively. So that's it. I think we're going to have a conversation now, right? Yes. Thank you.